Book 2, Chapter 3. Zanoni followed the young Neapolitan into her house. Gionetta vanished. They were left alone. Alone, in that room so often filled, in the old happy days, with the wild melodies of Pisani. And now, as she saw this mysterious, haunting, yet beautiful and stately stranger standing on the very spot where she had sat at her father's feet, thrilled and spellbound, she almost thought, in her fantastic way of personifying her own airy notions, that spiritual music had taken shape and life, and stood before her, glorious in the image it assumed. She was unconscious all the while of her own loveliness. She had thrown aside her hood and veil. Her hair, somewhat disordered, fell over the ivory neck which the dress partially displayed, and as her dark eyes swam with grateful tears, and her cheek flushed with its late excitement, the god of light and music himself never, amidst his Arcadian valleys, wooed in his mortal guise maiden or nymph more fair. Zanoni gazed at her with a look in which admiration seemed not unmingled with compassion. He muttered a few words to himself, and then addressed her aloud. "Viola, I have saved you from a great peril, not from dishonor only, but perhaps from death. The prince, under a weak despot and a venal administration, is a man above the law. He is capable of every crime, but amongst his passions he has such prudence as belongs to ambition. If you were not to reconcile yourself to your shame, you would never enter the world again to tell your tale. The ravisher has no heart for repentance, but he has a hand that can murder. I have saved you, Viola. Perhaps you would ask me wherefore." Zanoni paused, and smiled mournfully as he added, "You will not wrong me by the thought that he who has preserved is not less selfish than he who would have injured. Orphan, I do not speak to you in the language of your wooers. Enough that I know pity, and am not ungrateful for affection. Why blush? Why tremble at the word? I read your heart while I speak, and I see not one thought that should give you shame. I say not that you love me yet. Happily, the fancy may be roused long before the heart is touched. But it has been my fate to fascinate your eye, to influence your imagination. It is to warn you against what could bring you but sorrow, as I warned you once to prepare for sorrow itself, that I am now your guest. The Englishman, Glyndon, loves thee well, better, perhaps, than I can ever love. If not worthy of thee yet, he has but to know thee more to deserve thee better. He may wed thee, he may bear thee to his own free and happy land, the land of thy mother's kin. Forget me, teach thyself to return and deserve his love, and I tell thee that thou wilt be honored and be happy." Viola listened with silent, inexpressible emotion and burning blushes to this strange address, and when he concluded, she covered her face with her hands and wept. And yet, much as his words were calculated to humble or irritate, to produce indignation or excite shame, those were not the feelings with which her eyes streamed and her heart swelled. The woman at that moment was lost in the child, and as a child, with all its exciting, craving, yet innocent desire to be loved, weeps in unrebuking sadness when its affection is thrown austerely back upon itself. So, without anger and without shame, wept Viola. Zanoni contemplated her thus, as her graceful head, shadowed by its redundant tresses, bent before him, and after a moment's pause, he drew near to her, and said in a voice of the most soothing sweetness, and with half a smile upon his lip, "Do you remember, when I told you to struggle for the light, that I pointed, for example, to the resolute and earnest tree? I did not tell you, fair child, to take example by the moth, that would soar to the star, but falls scorched beside the lamp. Come, I will talk to thee. This Englishman—" Viola drew herself away, and wept yet more passionately. "This Englishman is of thine own years, not far above thine own rank. Thou mayest share his thoughts in life, thou mayest sleep beside him in the same grave in death, and I. But that view of the future should concern us not. Look into thy heart, and thou wilt see that till again my shadow crossed thy path, there had grown up for this thine equal a pure and calm affection that would have ripened into love. Hast thou never pictured to thyself a home in which thy partner was thy young wooer? Never, said Viola with sudden energy, never, but to feel that such was not the fate ordained me. And oh, she continued, rising suddenly, and putting aside the tresses that veiled her face, she fixed her eyes upon the questioner. And oh, whoever thou art that thus wouldst read my soul and shape my future, do not mistake the sentiment that she faltered an instant, and went on with downcast eyes, that has fascinated my thoughts to thee. Do not think that I could nourish a love unsought and unreturned. It is not love that I feel for thee, stranger. Why should I? Thou hast never spoken to me but to admonish, and now to wound. Again she paused. Again her voice faltered. The tears trembled on her eyelids. She brushed them away and resumed. No, not love, if that be love which I have heard and read of, and sought to simulate on the stage, but a more solemn, fearful, and, it seems to me, almost preternatural attraction, which makes me associate thee, waking or dreaming, with images that at once charm and awe. Thinkest thou, if it were love, that I could speak to thee thus, that— She raised her looks suddenly to his. Mine eyes could thus search and confront thine own. Stranger, I ask but at times to see, to hear thee. Stranger, talk not to me of others. Forewarn, rebuke, bruise my heart, reject the not unworthy gratitude it offers thee, if thou wilt, but come not always to me as an omen of grief and trouble. Sometimes I have seen thee in my dreams, surrounded by shapes of glory and light, thy looks radiant with a celestial joy which they wear not now. Stranger, thou hast saved me, and I thank and bless thee. Is that also a homage thou wouldst reject? With these words she crossed her arms meekly on her bosom, and inclined lowlily before him. Nor did her humility seem unwomanly or abject, nor that of mistress to lover, of slave to master, but rather of a child to its guardian, of a neophyte of the old religion to a priest. Zanoni's brow was melancholy and thoughtful. He looked at her with a strange expression of kindness, of sorrow, yet of tender affection, in his eyes, but his lips were stern, and his voice cold, as he replied, Do you know what you ask, Viola? Do you guess the danger to yourself, perhaps to both of us, which you court? Do you know that my life, separated from the turbulent herd of men, is one worship of the beautiful, from which I seek to banish what the beautiful inspires in most? As a calamity, I shun what to man seems the fairest fate, the love of the daughters of earth. At present I can warn and save thee from many evils. If I saw more of thee, would the power still be mine? You understand me not. What I am about to add, it will be easier to comprehend. I bid thee banish from thy heart all thought of me, but as one whom the future cries aloud to thee to avoid. Glyndon, if thou acceptest his homage, will love thee till the tomb closes upon both. I, too, he added with emotion, I, too, might love thee. You, cried Viola, with the vehemence of a sudden impulse of delight, of rapture, which she could not suppress. But the instant after, she would have given worlds to recall the exclamation. Yes, Viola, I might love thee, but in that love what sorrow and what change! The flower gives perfume to the rock on whose heart it grows. A little while, and the flower is dead, but the rock still endures. The snow at its breast, the sunshine on its summit. Pause. Think well. Danger besets thee yet. For some days thou shalt be safe from thy remorseless persecutor, but the hour soon comes when thy only security will be in flight. If the Englishman love thee worthily, thy honor will be dear to him as his own. If not, There are yet other lands where love will be truer, and virtue less in danger from fraud and force. Farewell. My own destiny I cannot foresee, except through cloud and shadow. I know, at least, that we shall meet again, but learn ere then, sweet flower, that there are more genial resting places than the rock. He turned as he spoke, and gained the outer door where Gianetta discreetly stood. Zanoni lightly laid his hand on her arm. With the gay accent of a jesting cavalier, he said, "The Signor Glinden woos your mistress. He may wed her. I know your love for her. Disabuse her of any caprice from me. I am a bird, ever on the wing." He dropped a purse into Gianetta's hand as he spoke, and was gone.